Hear ye, hear ye. Welcome one and all to another webcast from tggeeks.com, where Ben and Keith, the two gay geeks, talk all about aspects of geekdom and nerdery. Sci-fi, comics, film, horror, genre, and you name it, we talk about it. I am Keith Lane, your producer and sound engineer. Today we have a treat for all of you avid readers of sci-fi action adventures. I'll let Ben introduce the segment now.
Well, Jeannie Koch writes the fast, fresh, and funny Alien/Catherine Kitty Cat series for DAW Books, the Necropolis Enforcement File series, and the Martian Alliance Chronicles series for Musa Publishing. Book 7 in her long-running Alien series, Alien in the House, won the RT Book Review's Reviewer's Choice Award as the Best Futuristic Romance of 2013. Book 9 of that same series, Alien Collective, was released in May, and Universal Alien is coming this December. Now, there are psychiatric textbooks written about Jeannie as she gives the term multiple personality disorder a completely new meaning. Why? Well, under the name G.J. Koch, she writes the Alexander Outland series, as well as writing under a variety of other pen names such as Anita Ansel, Gemma Chase, A.E. Stanton, and J.C. Koch. In addition to her upcoming Alien series release in December, Jeannie will have stories featured in the Unidentified Funny Objects 3, Clockwork Universe, Steampunk vs. Aliens, and 221 Baker Street's anthologies, and writing as J.C. Koch in The Madness of Cthulhu and A Dark Fantastique anthologies, all out in or before October. She will also have an Alien series short in the November series of Penumbra e-magazine and a story in the third book in an X-Files anthology series coming out in 2015. Well, that's about all we have time for our show, so I'm just kidding. Jeannie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
Glad to have you here. Now, I have to ask this question, especially given your bio that I just read. How did you get into writing, and what was your first book?
Well, when you ask an author that, the first book you write is not necessarily the first book that gets published. Touched by an Alien is the first novel that was published, but it's certainly not the first thing I ever wrote. I actually started writing because the voices in my head got so loud and so obnoxious that the only choice I had was to write them down to shut them up. So the joke about multiple personality disorder is probably not so much funny as accurate reporting. But the first thing I ever wrote, I actually started writing novels set in the Old West, and I learned to write on the first that series, and I would version the versions like software. So version 9.2.2 is what my agent has in his shopping. But, 9 whole versions of a novel series until I finally got it right. But I also wrote short stories and other things along the way. I'm not a believer in the finish what you start line of thinking. I am a believer in finish something, but it should be the right something. Not everything you start should be finished. Many things are just, almost a writing exercise, even though you love that.
So sometimes you start writing and then all of a sudden...
Shift gears?
For me, it was interesting. I mean, I'm a self-taught author, though I am, I'm a college graduate and I'm the daughter and granddaughter of English teachers. So, I certainly had some background in there. But I just liked doing it, and I realized as it started as a hobby, just as something to do, literally to shut those voices up. And as it kept going, I realized that I was avoiding going to barbecues and birthdays and going out to dinner and anything because I wanted to write. And when I realized that, this was the thing, my, one thing that really, really was the thing I wanted to do. I needed to ensure that I could do that in a professional manner. So that's when I really started focusing on writing for publication. but it took a much longer than I'd like to admit to get to the point where Touched by an Alien came out. And it was supposed to be a dark, short, noirish horror story. And when I started writing it, the voice was not a voice I had used before, and it sounded snarky and fun and sarcastic, and thankfully I let it roll, because that book gave me my career.
It's great. I love the book. I think it's, I was telling Ben, I started reading it at first, and I said, oh my God, this is so genie. It's snarky and it's funny and it's just great.
I get that a lot from people. It's like, this sounds like you. You're Kitty, right? It's like, no, I am Kitty. I'm also all the villains and everybody else.
Well, this brings up my next question. Now, as you've just acknowledged, Touched by an Alien, it has a certain snarkiness to its writing style, and Keith and I have known you for a couple of years now, and I can easily see how much of your own personality is very clearly reflected in this book, and in the character of Kat. I really got that. So this, of course, now begs the question. Given that Kat appears to, and I say with air quotes, sound so much like you in reality, are there any extraterrestrial secrets that you may be harboring?
I'm not at liberty to discuss that. I would just like to say, when you look at those really, really, really ridiculously good-looking people on television, many of them are probably Alpha Centaurian troubadours.
Well, of course.
Now that's kind of funny, because just as a side question, and as I was reading the book myself, I started picking faces that I had seen on television or in movies, and started kind of planting them as characters. Now, just as a thought, if this were to be made into a movie, Touched by an Alien, just out of curiosity, who would you like to see as some of your principal players?
Well, there's two answers to that. The business answer is whoever could open the movie or the TV show, and I'm sure it has.
Oh, no business answer. No.
That's a business answer. That's a business answer. Because I'm a businesswoman first and a writer second, very honestly.
What's your dreamy?
Yeah.
25 years in marketing.
Your dreamy.
Matt is born to play James Reeder. I really love Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Tim Crawford. Scarlett Johansson as Lorraine, and Jessica Alba as Claudia. Those four I've seen for a long time as the characters. Who I see for Kitty, Martini, and Christopher kind of changes as the years go on. In 2007, which is when I wrote Touched by an Alien, it came out in 2010, but it was written in 2007, I saw completely different people in the roles. Right now, if it was going into production tomorrow, I would like Emma Frost as Kitty, Chris Hemsworth with brown hair and brown contact lenses as Martini, and Christopher, probably Chris Pine for Christopher.
Interesting.
But that's changed, and in next year I may have a different opinion. But if people want to see who I see as the characters, Pinterest, yay! I have a Pinterest board, and you can go. I've got all my stuff up there, and I've got see the characters. I list who I see. For example, like Joel McHale, I see as Chucky, or similar. So people that could play them, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, and
yeah. So that's all up there, so you can see who I see right now. And then when I make a change, I actually made a change in who I see as Richard White. As the series goes on, Richard's basically described by Kitty as looking like Timothy Dalton, only hotter.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the opportunity, fellow author Eric Howery Penner. I think I just screwed up his name. I'm sorry, Eric. And that's what happens with live podcasts. But anyway, he is Ted Danson's uncle. And Eric very nicely introduced me to Ted Danson a couple Tucson Festival of Books ago. And Ted Danson is a nice-looking man on TV. Oh, my God. He is so charismatic and a total silver fox in person. And I was just like meeting him thinking, I have just recast this role. Now, I want him playing Richard White because, dang. And everyone's having the same reaction around him. You look so much even better in person. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we saw him a few years back when he was working on Becker, and so, yeah, he's a very, very good-looking man.
He is. He is a good-looking man on TV, but there's no comparison to in person. I don't get tongue-tied and flabbergasted around a lot of people, but I did with him. It was just like, hi. You're so pretty.
Yeah, well, he's a very good-looking guy. I want to go back to these other names that you write under. Now, I jokingly earlier said that you give multiple personality disorder a new meaning. What I really should have said is that you give the phrase prolific, a whole new standard of measurement. Now, why the different names, and does your writing style change under each name?
Yes, and that's why the different names. As Ginny Koch and as G.J. Koch, I write very funny. I actually think G.J. Koch in the Alexander Outland series is funnier than Ginny Koch. So, but the adage of dying is easy, comedy is hard is very true. I am funny naturally. I do write funny very well, but funny requires a whole different kind of editing and review when I'm writing than a dramatic scene. And for example, it's very difficult to kill. It's very easy to kill characters. It is challenging in the extreme to then make the reader laugh a page or two later. And I have to do that as Ginny Koch and G.J. Koch. And that's very tiring. And usually when I've come off one or two of the Alien novels or writing as G.J. Koch, I pretty much, it's like I don't want to be funny. I don't want to make a joke. I don't want to have to make anybody laugh. I'd really just like to kill something and make it gory, which is why I write horror as J.C. Koch, because I don't have to have, the monster can have a happy ending in horror. And then as Anita Ensal, I get more of, I would call, I think of the pen names as separate people in my mind because it helps me get into their voices. Anita Ensal is kind of peace, love, and Bobby Sherman, and she writes about, science fiction, fantasy, horror, but she has a more thoughtful approach than Ginny Koch does. Gemma Chase, I think of as a goth girl who loves, blood and chocolate. And so she writes more paranormal, and also, they have a different kind of sense of humor than I do as Ginny. It's much more understated, a little more gallows. And then A.E. Stanton, I look at as an old cowboy who does not have a sense of humor he is aware of. And that's what I write anything that's set in the Old West under as A.E. Stanton. And there is humor in there, but there's gallows humor. His characters are, making jokes between each other, but there aren't the same laugh out loud moments that you'll have in the Alien series. So it allows me to write every story I want to tell, however I want to tell it. Is really nice. Because your name on the book is your promise to the reader. If you pick up something by Ginny Koch, there's going to be humor in it of some kind. Some maybe not as screamingly laugh out loud as others, but there's going to be humor. Anita Ensal is a whole different thing. If you picked up, for example, Cup of Joe, which is a science fiction romance novella that I wrote as Anita Ensal, it doesn't sound anything like Ginny. You can spot, if you know it's me, you can spot writing habits, or certain turns of phrase that I will use, but the tone and the voice, the way the words get put together is different. And I like being able to do that.
Interesting. That's really interesting because I was kind of wondering if maybe this was a reflection of what the industry was doing, and that maybe the industry was kind of forcing you to write under pen names in an attempt to get sold. It never occurred to me that there was a psychological / practical reason for wanting to have these other identities, for lack of a better term. That's really enlightening.
Well, there is also an industry reason, and the industry reason, Bruce Holland Rogers, very early when I was still writing, didn't have an agent, and I had the opportunity to meet him. He's a lovely guy, very, very generous to other authors. And we talked about my writing, and I told him every genre I wrote in and how I changed my voice. He's like, you have to do pen names. He said, I don't care what anybody else is telling you. Here's why you have to do them. He said, right now you have a novel series set in the Old West, and you have an epic fantasy that we were talking about. He said, let's say the epic fantasy gets published first. Great. It's in the fantasy section, and it's under one name. And let's say it goes under Anita Ensall. And now the novel set in the Old West sells, and it comes out. Well, the bookstore and the library see it's by Anita Ensall, and they're going to put it right next to that epic fantasy. Meaning the readers who would actually read the novel set in the Old West will never see it. The fantasy readers will pick it up. There will never be a moment of fantasy in it, and you will lose every reader, and your career's over.
Exactly.
That could be the same reason why J.K. Rowling, after finishing Harry Potter and then decided to write something completely separate from the Potter universe, had difficulty getting that novel. She wasn't finding any success with it.
Yeah, till they leaked it.
Well, yeah.
But, Nora Roberts had the same thing, writing as J.D. Robb. The J.D. Robb books, actually, the In Death series was doing atrociously. And then the publisher leaked that it was Nora Roberts, and all of a sudden everybody flocked to it, and now it's as easily as successful as her romance stuff. But I have friends and readers who either love Nora's romance or love the In Death series. Some like both, but usually it's a smaller nucleus of those who like both. There's those who love her romances, there are those who love her mysteries, and there's a much smaller subset who love both. So it is challenging when you change. It's actually one of the reasons I'm really excited to be in the 221 Baker Street anthology, because that is an anthology of Holmesian fiction. We get to put Sherlock and Watson anywhere, anytime, anyhow. And because I have several mysteries that I would like to sell, I'm very excited. I won't say anything about my story because I have some very fun twists in it, but I set it in present day, and there's absolutely no speculative fiction in it, because I want my readers to be able to understand that I do write straight mystery as well. Everything I write has a mystery in it. I call that my foundation, is the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
But the walls that go up around it tend to be science fiction, fantasy, paranormal, or horror, but in this case, it's just the mystery house kind of thing. So I'm very excited about it.
Well, you are a mystery.
So I'm even more excited about it.
Well, I want to go back to something that you touched on a little bit ago, and that's how when you first started Touched by an Alien, it started off as a horror. Mm-hmm. Out of curiosity, because when I read Touched by an Alien, it was just brimming with life. Mm-hmm. It really came alive as I was reading it. I didn't feel like I was just reading words on a page. I really honestly felt like I was really reading something that had vibrancy to it. So I have to wonder, when you start writing a story, do you kind of go in already with some sort of an idea as to how it's going to go? And because you've got voices in your head, do you sway?
Yes. Well, first is no. I am an extreme linear writer. I start with the title, and then the first line, and when I get to the end, I stop. Literally, that's how I write. Now, I'm working on book 11, so because Universal Aliens, that's already turned in, it's going to press. So that's coming out in December. So I'm working on Alien Separation, which is coming out in May 2015. And now, this many books into a series, yeah, I kind of have to have more of an idea of what's going to happen. My editor at DAW and I have talked about, all these things, and I'm currently contracted through book 13 in the series. I'm hoping to get to 16 or 20. So, she and I have a very long-term plan, and I can call her and do call her at odd hours and everything else. And my critique partner and I know what's coming in a very general sense. But how it ends up on the page, it's all in what the characters tell me. In Alien Collective, I had a character who was supposed to be and remain a bad guy, and he just refused. He was like, I am not what you are trying to make me. And he and I had a bargain all the way through the book. It's like, okay, I need you to do this, and then you can do that, okay, that kind of thing. But very early on in my writing career, when I was working on the novel set in the Old West, so the first things I was ever writing, I heard a character take over. He said, "You're not doing that right. Let me just tell you what this really means." And every author has this experience, and it is the most exciting, wonderful, bizarre thing you've ever experienced when something in your head is just saying, nope, that's wrong, here we go. And I learned how to tap into what I call writing from the hindbrain, so that by the time the story that, like I said, I'd had a dream, basically. It was a dark, short, noirish horror story dream. And really, the first part of the chapter is that dream. But when it came out differently, and I didn't know at the start if the narrator was male or female. I just let it ride, and I realized, okay, it's a girl, right, very early on. And then I didn't know any of the characters' names until they tell you them in the book, because Kitty was telling me what was happening, to the point that when she says her name, my name is Catherine, Cat, K-A-T-T, and yes, before you ask, my parents call me Kitty. I stopped writing, turned away from the computer, and went, Kitty Cat, seriously, Kitty Cat. And she said, yeah, my parents have a sense of humor, keep writing. And I did. So it was wonderful, because that was probably the first time an entire novel had written itself. Yeah, I really felt just like I was channeling Kitty. And that is writing from the hindbrain. And it's great, because it's all in there. It's all in you if you are, this kind of creative person. And you just have to let it out. So it's a wonderful feeling. And I try to get there. Sometimes if I'm struggling, my crypt partner will go, not on the hindbrain. Yeah, okay, fine, you're right. So, it's a fun thing to do. So yes, the characters talk to me, and more, the supporting characters talk to me, because they're trying to shove their viewpoint in. The Alien series, it's funny, when I first started writing, I did not write in first person very much. And when I was, getting close to being at a point where I would write something good enough to be published, the conventional thinking was that, well, humor never sells. That's always conventional thinking. Science fiction doesn't sell, also conventional thinking. And first person, nobody ever wants it, also a conventional thinking. Fortunately, I ignore all that, because, I'm writing humorous science fiction with first person POV. So I know when to ignore those rules and those adages. But now a great majority of what I write is in first person. So
maybe they don't sell separately, but put them all together and they sell.
It's just somebody hears on stage from somebody at a conference that we don't want. Every year you hear from editors how they don't want vampire novels anymore. And every year there are new vampire novels. Vampires will never die, har, har, har. But they won't, because people love them. What their editors are saying is, I am personally sick of seeing vampires, but darn it, if you send me one I know I can sell, I will be buying it.
Yep.
So you just have to write the books you want to write, the ones that are speaking to you, and go on. And again, I'm not, one of the biggest reasons I'm not a big proponent of finish everything you start. Not, like I said, not everything is ready. If I had just focused on the novel set in the Old West, I would not have a career, because it's a very hard sell. It's a story that people love, and my agent loves this and believes in this book. It's gone back to various publishers 3 and 4 times, where it's like, they're like, let me see it again. Oh, it doesn't fit our line, that kind of thing. So I know it will be, but I wouldn't have a career if that was the only thing I focused on.
Well, also, I like the idea of you saying that you just didn't finish everything that you immediately started. I think the idea of being able to shift gears and maybe jump onto another project to either start it or you started book A. You need to put it. You need to. It's not happening at the moment. You've kind of hit, I don't say a writer's block, but different voices are now talking to you. Voices that are not part of this story. So now you want to shift over to this other book, because I think by jumping back and forth like that, it allows for each story to have its own organic progression.
Yes, I totally agree. And also, before I was on deadline, so this would especially be during my agent signed me in December 2007, and we sold the first 2 book deal, Touch by an Alien and Alien Tango, to DAW in May 2008. And I didn't get my edits on Touch because it wasn't going to come out until 2010, until like October 2009. So there was this gigantic gap. And what my agent told me was, write anything and everything you want to write. And she was right, you'll never have the same free time, God willing, that you will have right now. So I just wrote anything and everything, and stuff was just flowing out of me. It was great. And it's the last free writing time I've ever had. And during that time, what would happen is I would be like, okay, I want to work on one of these 4, and I'd write a little here and bounce and write a little here, and then whichever one really took off, that's the one that got finished. So it was nice. I still do that, especially when I'm right off of a novel, like I am right now off of Universal Alien. Yes, I'm working on Alien Separation, but I have 2 other novels and 3 short stories and a novella all due before the end of the year, and then like 3 more shorts due immediately in the start of the year. So I have to keep rolling on these things, so I bounce from those. Now, it's like, okay, this is all contracted work, but I'm going to bounce from here and bounce to here and bounce to there, and it does allow you to think of, you know, you were working, like I was working on Alien Separation and went to bed and thought, that's the thing I need to do on my X-Files short. So I think it allows me the creativity. The harder thing for me is that almost this is not a bad thing, and I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but the hardest thing for me is that most of what is contracted is as Ginny Koch. So I don't get to change my overall voice as much, and I find that to be the most challenging thing. Because instead of getting to go from something by Ginny to something by Gemma to something by A.E. to something by J.C. Koch, right, I'm having to go from one thing by Ginny to a different thing by Ginny to that other thing by Ginny. And while the voice changes a little, it's still the Ginny Koch voice. And so it's very challenging for me, and I'm getting better at it because, you know, every challenge in your career, you have to rise to and learn how to deal with, or your career is going to derail. So doing that, I find that I'm getting better at switching the mindset into this particular character and that particular character. But it's a lot easier if I get to go to something where I get to write as J.C. Koch, for example, because, like I said, that's horror, and I will pound out a horror short. If I have an idea at the end of one of my humorous novels, I'll pound out a horror short in like 3 days. Because it's just like, oh yeah, ha ha!
You get to be evil.
I get to be evil. I get to examine things. I don't have to make anybody laugh, and I don't have to have a happy ending. I may have one. My story Outsiders, which is in Dark Fantastique, which is a Lovecraftian anthology. Actually, as far as I'm concerned, has a very happy ending.
And the monster lived happily ever after with all the bodies surrounding him that he could eat.
Something like that. Not quite like that, but something like that. So, but, you know, so as far as I'm concerned, my protagonist has a happy ending. And this is a story I've been wanting to tell for decades, honestly. But others, you know, it depends on who I consider my protagonist. In horror is not necessarily who I would consider my protagonist in my regular novels. So my protagonist always wins in horror. It's just the protagonist most of the time is the monster.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so refreshing. So that becomes a challenge when I don't have something, you know, in the non-funny pen names contracted. I either have to whip something out really quickly so that, hey, I have it standing ready in case, or I just have to, you know, now be at a point where I can just shift from the different Ginny Koch voices. But, you know, you learn as you go along. I didn't used to be able to just insert a scene out of nowhere smoothly into a novel, and I had to learn to do that with Edison's book 3, Alien in the Family. So you get good at things you were afraid of or didn't think you could do.
So
one day I'll even be able to outline.
So for everybody who's listening to this, I mean, it clearly shows that there is a wealth of material that you have produced, both that's already published and material that is about to be published. So for people who are interested, and let me just go ahead and say this again. Keith and I, we've read Touched by an Alien, and we loved it. I thought it was probably... I read a number of, quite a few science fiction books of the last year, and I found Touched by an Alien to be the most fun, enjoyable read I've had in ages. I mean, I could not put that book down. I couldn't wait to, when I had a free moment, to pick it back up and just keep going to see where this story was going to take me. So I would beg all of our listeners, please read Jeannie's work. It is absolutely amazing. So for everybody who is out there, Jeannie, how can people find out more about you? Are you anywhere on the intertubes, the interweb, social media? How can people follow you and your work?
Oh, I'm everywhere. The easiest place to find all of this is at my website, which is www.ginnykoch.com, and it's spelled just like my pen name, Ginikoch. You go to the bookstore, and on the bookstore page, there's a bibliography, and you can see everything that's out, and a listing of most of what's coming. I'm also on Twitter as @GinnyKoch. I am on Facebook, both as Ginny Koch and Hairspray and Rock and Roll, which is my fan page. And I like people to follow me on both because I update a little bit differently on both of those. Like I said, I'm on Pinterest, again, Ginny Koch. It becomes fairly easy to find me, just, search on the name. And that's there. And you can get my email out of any of the books, and also from my website. I don't really hide. And then from my website, I have a subscribers list, Hook Me Up, which is free, and you get all the news first, access to exclusive contests, and more. So I really encourage people who want to know what's going on to get onto Hook Me Up, because it costs them nothing to do it, and they will get semi-regular emails from me. It depends. Sometimes you're hearing from me 5 days a week, and it's like, I'm done. And sometimes, like the last couple of months, you're hearing from me twice a month because I'm so busy. But you do hear from me, and all the cool contests go to Hook Me Up. So
fantastic.
Free early release books, things like that, meet and greets, things. All of those natures are all focused for Hook Me Up.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Jeannie, I just want to say thank you for talking to us.
Thanks a lot.
I can't wait to read more of your work, not just under Jeannie, but all your other pen names. I'm fascinated. So I just want to say, Jeannie, thank you.
Thank you. It's been awesome to be here.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. And just a reminder of all the places that you can find us. We are everywhere. We are tggeeks.com, as well as 2GayGeeks, the2gaygeeks.com. On Google Plus and YouTube, look for us as 2GayGeeks. We have 2 Twitter handles, @TGGeeks and @the2gaygeeks. On Facebook, search for TG Geeks Webcast, and on Tumblr, we are 2GayGeeks. Of course, we are listed on iTunes as TG Geeks Podcast, and we added a voicemail feedback line where you can call in and leave your feedback. The number is 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357. We might even use a voicemail or two on our future show. Okay, that should do it for this week. Thank you for listening of this episode of TG Geeks Webcast. For Ginny Koch and Ben Raggington, I am Keith Lane. Peace.
Cheers.
Talk to you all soon and later.